Well, joining us now on Market Talk as we continue our conversations with the folks at Brevant Seeds, we're also roping in the team at Corteva Agriscience for this conversation today as we get a bit of a harvest update from Iowa. Also talk about some nitrogen things to think about as we prepare for 2026 and much more. Joining us for today's conversation, we have Adam Malang, retail sales agronomist for Brevant Seeds, and Andrew Luzum, nitrogen stabilizer strategic account manager for Corteva Agriscience. Adam, Andrew, thank you both for joining us here today. Hope all is well.
Thanks for having us, Jesse.
Thanks for having us on.
Adam, I'll start with you real quick. I'm just curious, how is harvest progressing in your neck of the woods there in central Iowa? I'm sure things have been rolling fast and furious here over the last several weeks. In general, how have things been going?
Absolutely. They've been running pretty hard. We got a pretty good rain last night across my territory. Slowed some people down today, but beans are progressing very nicely, very good yields, having a good year on beans. There's a lot of growers starting to get done with beans and moving into corn really hard. We're having good yields on the corn side too, and moving right along.
Well, as we work through this year's harvest season, we're going to have that late season fall field work and a lot of folks making decisions for 2026. So, Andrew, I'll come to you. Let's talk a little bit about nitrogen. And from a nitrogen standpoint, what should farmers be doing now as they're working through harvest and get ready for fall field work? What should they be doing now to prepare for 2026?
Yeah, as we look forward to 2026, I think everybody knows that nitrogen is not cheap, right? We're talking north of 50 cents a unit. So probably one of the most expensive inputs we're going to have on the farm this year. So with that, we want to make sure we're stabilizing it with N-Serve or Instinct this fall. That includes, from an Instinct perspective, manure applications that are starting to happen today, focusing our starting point there because there's some significant value in the manure side. And then as we look out, in the next 30 days, soil temps are going to cool down. We're going to start those anhydrous applications. We will make sure we're keeping N-Serve in the tank so that we keep that nitrogen investment around for next year for the crop Adam's hopefully going to plant. So,
well, and Andrew as well. I mean, thinking about that price of nitrogen and other fertilizers and more, I mean, how can farmers, you mentioned N-Serve, I mean, things like that, how can we make the most out of that fall applied nitrogen?
Yeah, so a quart of N-Serve will help make the most out of it. We protect 6 to 8 weeks of keeping that nitrogen in the ammonium form. So the longer it's in the ammonium form, it's soil stable. When we do convert to nitrate, that's what we talk about, leaching through our waterways. So we want to make sure we're keeping it in a stable form the plant's going to find next year.
Adam, I'll come back to you. Your thoughts on making the most of some of these fall applied nitrogen applications or just other management decisions that we kind of have to make here as we wrap up harvest and get that field work going. I mean, what are some things from the agronomist side that you would remind producers they need to be thinking about as they're talking with you, talking with their retailer and more here in the coming weeks ahead?
Yeah, I'd echo a little bit of what Andrew was saying. Nitrogen's our biggest limiting factor, and especially on the N-Serve and Instinct side, we definitely need to stabilize that nitrogen. And it was a limiting factor this year with how wet everything was this spring through planting. We just had one of them years, and one of the big conversations right now is Southern rust, and I think a lot of that kind of got hurt losing its nitrogen and let some of that Southern rust in. So, I wouldn't change the script completely based off of that. We're not going to get all the moisture that we got this year every year, but N-Serve is one of them that has been proven and pays over and over again. And, along them lines as well, your dry fertilizer. We have record soybean yields this year, and don't forget how much fertilizer that, the soybean crop takes out. Don't forget about the soybeans and focus all in on the corn. They both need it, and that's the most important thing for us right now is to grow as many bushels as we can and have them in our hands.
Well, I think about this, gentlemen. I mean, taking notes, scouting, having the conversations that you need, they're so important as we wrap up another harvest season and think about 26. And Adam, I'll ask you from the Brevant side, thinking retail, Tell us a little bit more about the role that retail plays in helping farmers when it comes to seed selection, for instance, as we're thinking about next year. I know a lot of those conversations are already happening. So what's your thoughts there on how retail and how Brevant plays a role?
Absolutely. I spent a lot of my career before I came to Corteva on the retail side, and uh, second to the grower, the grower knows his farms the best. Retail knows them very, very well. They're out there doing soil samples. They're scouting every day, putting in fertilizer X, doing the right things, and they are a partner of that farm. There's the good ones act like it's their acres and help them in any way they can. So it's very important to work with your retail agronomist and, laying out a plan for next year, laying out that script. And, Brevant carries a full lineup uh, of hybrids and varieties that can cover any situation and every acre that the grower comes across.
And I know if growers want more information, Brevant.com is a great place to start. There's a lot of information there, contacting their local retailer and much more. There's a lot of ways to learn more about how Brevant can help, right, Adam?
Absolutely. Yep. Contact your local Brevant retailer, and they have access to me and a lot of my team, and we can always help you in any decision that you need to make.
Well, gentlemen, I'll ask you for final thoughts. Andrew, I'll come back to you. Anything else you would mention or reiterate to growers as they're thinking about that fall nitrogen application or other management practices here, getting ready for 2026? What else would you add here, Andrew?
Yeah, to Adam's point, they always like to say the acre starts with the seed, but really the acre starts with fall fertility this fall. We've been selling Ensur for 50 years here in 2026. So it's still the most proven compound in the nitrogen stabilizer space. I'll say this is, we've been starting to get some trials in as well. We've been seeing nice 7+ bushel increases with it. So it's a good return on investment. It's right for the environment and overall, make sure you're managing your nitrogen here in 2026.
And I know, too, if folks want to learn more about N-Serve and the other great products from the Corteva side of things, reaching out to their local retailer online. Andrew, a lot of ways to learn more, right?
Yep. Go to nutrientmaximizers.com or just talk to your local retailer.
Fantastic. Adam, come back to you. Any final thoughts? Anything else you would mention or reiterate to producers here as they're working through fall harvest and getting ready for next year?
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway that I would take from this year would be, in the form of Southern Rust. A couple of years ago, we had some tar spot move in, and a lot of people made decisions based off of that. We had the same thing with sudden death years ago. We haven't seen Southern Rust in 20 years. We have it really bad this year. It's been an off year. Don't make all of your decisions based off of the 1 year. There's a lot of things that are good takeaways from this year, and work with your local Brevant retailer and go through the situations.
Brevant.com for more information. Great conversation. Appreciate the time with that. We thank you guys for being here. Adam Malang with Brevant Seeds, Andrew Luzum with Corteva Agriscience. Thank you both for joining us here on Market Talk. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jesse.